My world shattered when my mother spoke those words. "She's filth we washed away. Let her rot in that shelter. Don't you dare bring that trash into my home." It was the turning point after which nothing could ever be the same again. Claire had spent her entire life believing in her family's perfection, until one uncomfortable question tore the mask of respectability from her mother's face. The illusion of order collapsed when her mom, looking her straight in the eye, spat out venomous words instead of remorse. "She's filth we washed away. Let her rot in that shelter. Don't you dare bring that trash into my home." In that moment, Claire understood. Their family happiness had been built on a crime. Claire spread documents across the table in her grandmother's living room with the same methodical precision she'd used her entire life balancing ledgers. Property deed on the left, death certificate in the center, passport copies, old contracts, bank statements on the right, arranged chronologically, each stack secured with a clear clip. Every document checked twice. Order. Outside the window, evening sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting bars of light across the floor, the same bars she remembered from childhood, when she'd sit here doing homework while her grandmother made dinner. Back then, this house had seemed like the safest place on earth. Now, it stood empty. So empty that Claire could hear her own breathing. A knitting basket sat by the sofa, yarn neatly wound around needles. A tablecloth lay folded over the armchair, white, embroidered with cornflowers, the one her grandmother only brought out for holidays. The old clock ticked off seconds in slow, mechanical beats, marking time that no longer belonged to anyone here. Claire ran her palm across the tabletop, wiping away dust that didn't exist. 3 weeks had passed since the funeral. 3 weeks during which she'd systematically sorted through the estate, because that was something she could control. Unlike grief. She opened the next folder, thick, bound with a faded rubber band. Inside should have been the house papers, technical passport, purchase agreement, property records. But when Claire untied the band, she found only half of what she expected. Technical passport in place, registry extract too, but the main packet, the transfer of ownership documents confirming her grandmother's title, was missing. Claire frowned, checked the folder again, pulled out each sheet, read the headers. Nothing. She returned to the cabinet where the documents were kept and methodically went through the remaining folders. Medical records, utility bills, pension statements. No house papers anywhere. Anxiety seeped into her chest, light, barely noticeable but recognizable, like the dizziness before a migraine starts. Claire sat back down at the table and opened her notebook. Wrote, "Check notary's archive, request duplicate deed." Added the date beside it, underlined it. If the documents were lost, they could be restored. It was a matter of time and procedure. She closed the notebook. The clock struck 6:30. Claire stood, gathered the documents back into folders, zipped her bag, and left the house. The lock clicked with dull finality. Attorney David Morrison's office was located in a business center on the 3rd floor. Glass doors, cold air conditioning, the smell of new carpet. The lawyer sat behind a wide desk where a lamp with harsh white light carved only the essentials from the darkness. Stacks of contracts, a computer, a pen. He greeted Claire without a smile, politely but distantly, the way you greet a client in line. "Please, have a seat." Claire sat in the hard office chair, placing her bag on her lap. Morrison opened the folder with her case and began flipping through pages. The rustle of paper, clicks of the mouse. He stopped at one page, leaned closer, picked up a yellow highlighter, and marked a line. Claire waited. Finally, he looked up. "There's a complication." His voice even, professional, but the word complication cut like a blade across glass. What kind? Claire straightened her spine. There's a third party listed in the registry of heirs. Silence. Claire inhaled slowly. A third party? My grandmother didn't have other heirs, just me and my mother. Morrison turned the monitor toward her. On the screen, a table with names. Claire read the first line. Linda Patterson. The second, Claire Patterson. And the third, Elena Hartley. The name hung on the screen like a question without an answer. Who is that? The deceased's granddaughter, according to the documents. Claire felt her jaw tighten. That's a mistake. Possibly. But the data was officially entered. Date of birth, 1993. Family relationship confirmed. That's impossible. My grandmother had one daughter, my mother, and one grandchild, me. Morrison turned the monitor back to its original position. According to the registry, the house is listed under 3 heirs. Without consent from all parties, processing is impossible. Claire gripped the handles of her bag. The fabric bit into her palms. Then find her. This, Elena, have her sign a waiver. We tried. The address is inactive. The phone doesn't answer. The last data is dated 15 years ago. Then remove her from the registry. That's only possible through court. The process will take 6 months to a year. A year? Claire stared at the attorney, trying to keep her expression neutral while something inside began to crumble, slowly, methodically, like old plaster beneath a crack. What should I do? Find Elena Hartley, get her signature, or prove that her claim to the inheritance is invalid. He handed Claire a printout of the registry. She took the sheet. The letters blurred before her eyes. I'll be in touch, Claire said, and stood. Morrison nodded. Claire left the office, walked through the glass corridor, descended the stairs, and stopped at the exit of the business center. Sunlight hit her face, bright, harsh, unpleasant. She stood on the sidewalk, clutching the printout, and felt reality slowly shifting beneath her feet. The house she'd considered hers. The grandmother she'd considered her only family. And now, a stranger's name wedged into her life like an error in an accounting report that couldn't be fixed with a single line. Elena Hartley. Claire didn't know that name, but that name knew her. At home, Claire opened her laptop and sat at the table, turned on the lamp, poured water into a glass, 3 sips slow to calm her breathing. Then she began searching, typed the name, Elena Hartley. Year of birth, 1993. First results? Nothing. A few social media pages, but the profiles were empty, no photos. Claire clicked on one, last activity 7 years ago. Another, profile locked. She tried searching archival records, opened the vital records database accessible through government services, entered the data. Nothing. Claire leaned back in her chair. The tension between her shoulder blades intensified. She returned to the registry again, read line by line. Stopped at the field, Basis for Inclusion in Inheritance. It read, Documented Confirmation, Social Services Archive. Social Services? Claire picked up her phone and called the district child welfare office. Voicemail. Hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. She checked her watch. 8:30 in the evening. Put the phone on the table, returned to the search. Tried different combinations. Elena Hartley plus New York. Elena Hartley plus 1993. Elena Hartley plus children plus shelter. The last query produced a result. A short article in a neighborhood newspaper archive, 10 years old. Headline: Foster care graduates, where the road to independence leads. Claire scrolled down. Among several names, Elena H., 21 years old, graduate of the Sunrise Social Rehabilitation Center. Sunrise. Claire wrote the name in her notebook, found the center's address, checked the hours. Open tomorrow from 10 a.m. She closed the laptop. Stood. Walked to the kitchen. Poured tea, though she wasn't thirsty. Sat by the window. Stared at the dark courtyard where streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement. Elena Hartley. Not a mistake. Not a ghost in documents. A person. A person who had once lived in a children's home. A person her grandmother had somehow included in the inheritance. A person whose existence Claire hadn't known about for 34 years. The fear was quiet, but stubborn. It sat in her chest like a shard of ice impossible to swallow. Claire finished the tea, washed the cup, went to bed, but didn't sleep. The Sunrise Rehabilitation Center sat on the city's outskirts, a gray 4-story building with a peeling sign where letters had partially worn away. In front of the entrance, a flower bed where lonely daisies and tangled spirea grew. Claire entered the lobby. It smelled of bleach and overwashed linens. At the reception desk sat a woman in a green smock, flipping through a magazine. "Hello." Claire approached the desk. "I'm looking for Elena Hartley." The woman looked up, studied Claire appraisingly. "Family?" "Yes." The lie came easily. Too easily. The woman picked up the phone, dialed an internal number. "Elena, someone's here to see you." Pause. "Okay." She hung up. "Second floor, room 12. Claire walked down the corridor, climbed the stairs. The walls were covered with faded mental health posters. Patients sat on benches, some staring out windows, some smoking on the balcony, some talking to themselves. Room 12 was at the end of the hall. Claire knocked. "Come in." She opened the door. Inside, a small room with a metal bed, nightstand, wardrobe. On the windowsill stood a glass of water. Under the bed, a neatly folded bag. By the window stood a woman. Thin, with ash blonde hair pulled into a ponytail, gray hoodie, worn sneakers, pale face with prominent cheekbones. She looked at Claire warily. "You're Elena Hartley?" The woman nodded. "I'm Claire Patterson, granddaughter of Anne Patterson." Elena froze. Her arms, which she'd held crossed over her chest, slowly dropped. "Anne Patterson." Her voice quiet, almost a whisper. "She died? 3 weeks ago." Elena turned toward the window. Her shoulders tensed. "I need to speak with you," Claire said. "About the house. About the inheritance." Elena didn't answer immediately, then slowly turned around. "I remember the house." "You remember it?" "Yes. I lived there when I was little." Claire felt a chill run down her spine. "You couldn't have lived there. Only my grandmother, my mother, and I lived there." Elena stepped closer. Her eyes, gray, attentive, looked straight at Claire. There was an old lamp in the house, shaped like a rabbit. It sat on the dresser in the entryway. Claire froze. The wallpaper in the living room, beige with roses, but in one corner, by the window, the flowers had faded to pale yellow. Her heart beat harder. And the staircase. The 4th step creaks, not like the others. The sound is higher, sharper. Claire couldn't answer. Words caught in her throat. The rabbit lamp, the faded wallpaper, the creak of the 4th step. Details no one knew. Details written down nowhere. Details only someone who actually lived in that house would remember. "How do you—" Claire took a step back. "How do you know this?" Elena lowered her gaze. I just remember it. I don't know why." Claire stared at her, at the fragile figure, at the hands fidgeting with the hoodie sleeve, at the face where sincerity mixed with something else. Confusion. Or fear. "I have to go," Claire said. She turned and left the room. The corridor seemed too long. Her legs moved mechanically, as if controlled by someone else. Claire descended the stairs, walked through the lobby, stepped outside. The air was humid, oppressive. She stopped at the fence, leaning her palms against the cold metal. Elena wasn't lying. That was clear. In her voice, in her gaze, in every gesture. But how could she know these details? Claire tried to find a rational explanation. Photographs? No, the old pictures didn't show the faded wallpaper. Stories? No, her grandmother had never described the house to anyone in such detail. Only one option remained. Elena really had lived there, and no one had ever told Claire about it. A sharp voice behind her tore her from her thoughts. "Hey!" Claire turned. A large man with a twisted face and tense eyes grabbed her arm. His fingers clamped down like a vice. "You stole my stuff." "What? No, Give it back. Give it back now." Claire tried to pull away, but the grip was strong. Painful. "Let go!" The man yanked her toward him. Claire smelled sweat and tobacco. A security guard ran out of the building, grabbed the man by the shoulders, pulled him away. "Michael, calm down. It's not her." The man resisted, shouting something unintelligible. Claire stood with her hand pressed to her chest. Her heart pounded so fast her breath caught. The guard restrained the man, led him back into the building. Silence returned. Claire looked at her arm, red marks from fingers. She turned and walked away. On the train, Claire sat by the window, watching houses slide past. Her reflection in the glass was pale, tense. Her familiar world was fracturing at the seams. Elena, not a con artist, not an imposter. She knew the house, knew details impossible to fabricate. So she really had lived there. But why had no one said anything about it? Claire closed her eyes. Her mother, Linda. She'd always avoided conversations about the past, cut off questions, changed the subject. Maybe she knew. Maybe she'd always known. Claire opened her notebook and wrote, "Check Social Services Archive. Find documents on Elena. Talk to Mother." Underlined the last line twice. If Linda had lied, Claire would find out. The train slowed. Her stop. Claire got off and headed home. That evening, in her grandmother's house, Claire walked through the rooms as if seeing them for the first time. The wallpaper in the living room really had faded in the corner. The rabbit lamp sat on the dresser where it had always been. She climbed the stairs. The fourth step creaked. The sound higher, sharper. Claire stopped. Listened. Crouched down. Ran her hand along the step. Then looked at the baseboard against the wall. The wood was different. Newer. She pulled at the edge. The baseboard gave way. Behind it, a niche. Claire froze. Inside lay belongings. A doll with one glass eye. Children's drawings with angular letters spelling Lena. A yellowed social services card with a stamp. Documents neatly folded as if someone had prepared them in advance. Claire pulled out the card, read the name. Elena Hartley. Date of birth, April 15th, 1993. Basis, temporary family placement. Duration, 3 years. 3 years. Elena had lived here 3 years, and someone had hidden it. Someone had removed all traces. Someone had sealed this niche like a time capsule, waiting for its moment. Claire slowly stood. Holding the card in her hands, she stared at the dark hallway. This was no longer a mistake. This was a secret. A secret someone had constructed, deliberately. And now it was unraveling, exposing everything that lay beneath the surface. Claire stood at the door where half her childhood had passed, holding the card from the hiding place. An address written on the back. South Brooklyn, 7th floor. Her mother's apartment. She pressed the buzzer. Too long, as if trying to break through the door with sound. Linda opened quickly, too quickly for a woman who usually checked the peephole for a minute. Face tense, eyebrows drawn together. Her gaze darted to the landing, as if she expected to see someone else. Claire, voice dry. You didn't call. I need to talk. Linda shifted from foot to foot, crossed her arms over her chest, pressing her elbows against her ribs. Now's not a good time. I was about to... Mom! The word came out sharper than Claire intended. Linda froze. Her fingers dug into her forearms. Come in. The apartment greeted her with familiar smells. Peppermint drops, overwashed towels, old furniture saturated with decades of cautious living. On the table lay an oilcloth with faded flowers. In the corner, the television murmured news. On the windowsill stood pots of geraniums, the only living things among belongings Linda had collected for years, afraid to throw away. Claire walked into the living room, sat on the couch where she'd once done homework while her mother checked recipes or knitted endless scarves. Linda remained standing, fidgeted with the edge of her cardigan. Tea? No. Want something to eat? I made borscht today. Mom. Who is Elena Hartley? The name fell between them like a shard of glass. Linda inhaled sharply, as if she'd swallowed air along with panic. Her hands dropped, fingers reaching for the edge of a doily on the armrest, began pulling at the fringe. Where did you... Her voice cracked. Where did you hear that name? From the inheritance registry. Silence. Long, drawn out. Linda turned toward the window. Her shoulders rose toward her ears. It's complicated. Explain it. Not now, Claire. I didn't sleep well. The doctor changed my dosage, and now my head's spinning. Should buy new curtains. These have completely faded. See? Claire watched her mother, feeling a strange emptiness in her chest. Linda wasn't just avoiding the subject. She was building a wall from trivialities, brick by brick. Elena remembers Grandma's house. Linda froze, her fingers stilled on the doily. What did you say? She remembers the rabbit lamp, the wallpaper in the living room, the fourth step on the staircase. Linda turned slowly, face pale, lips pressed into a thin line. That's impossible. Why? Because... She took a step toward the couch, stopped. Because she wasn't supposed to remember. The words came out quietly, but each one sounded like a hammer strike on a nail. Claire stood. So she really did live there. Linda covered her face with her hands. Her fingers trembled. Not now. Please. Not now. When? Never. Her voice sharp, almost a shout. Linda dropped her hands, eyes wet, but no tears. Some things are better left alone. Claire, understand. It's for your own good. My own good? Claire felt pressure building in her chest, familiar, suffocating. You've told me my whole life that truth matters, that honesty is the foundation of family, and now you're silent about a child who lived in Grandma's house? It's not your business. It is my business. The house is my inheritance. Elena is my problem, and I deserve to know the truth. Linda looked at her for a long time, gaze heavy, weary. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it. Linda turned away again, walked to the window, pressed her forehead against the glass. Go home, Claire. Claire stood in the middle of the living room, holding the card from the hiding place, and for the first time in many years felt sharp, stabbing pain. Not physical, emotional. Her mother was afraid. And this fear, old, deep, frozen, revealed more than any words could. Claire turned and left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The journey back passed in a blur. Bus, train. Claire sat by the window, staring at her reflection in the glass. Face pale, lips tense. Memories surfaced, one after another. Childhood. Adult conversations abruptly cut off when Claire entered a room, her grandmother's gaze lingering on the corner by the staircase as if she saw someone invisible. Linda once saying, "Don't touch those drawers, old things in there." Claire hadn't asked questions then. She'd grown accustomed to invisible boundaries existing in the house. Topics they didn't discuss. Places they didn't go. Now these boundaries were becoming visible, and each one exposed a lie. The train slowed. Her stop. Claire stepped onto the platform. The air was humid, smelled of rain that hadn't started yet. She walked through familiar streets, past old houses, trees, sagging fences. Her grandmother's house stood at the end of the street, as always. Quiet, empty. Claire climbed the steps. The key turned in the lock. The door opened. Inside was dark. Claire turned on the light in the entryway, walked to the staircase, stopped before the niche. The baseboard panel still lay nearby. Inside, documents, the doll, drawings. Claire sat on the floor, picked up the doll. The glass eye reflected the lamplight, creating a strange sensation, as if the doll were staring back. She put the doll down, reached deeper into the niche, checking if anything else remained. Her fingers touched the back wall, and the wall gave way. Claire froze. Pressed harder, the panel shifted a centimeter. More. A sharp crack. Wood splintered. Fragments rained down. Dust rose in a thick cloud, clogged her throat, made her cough. Claire recoiled. A piece of wood flew past her cheek, hit the floor with a dull thud. Her heart pounded, breathing ragged. When the dust settled, Claire saw, behind the broken panel, part of the wall had opened. Fresh plaster. Smooth. New. She ran her hand over the surface. Cold. Dense. The repair had been done recently, no more than 10 years ago. Her grandmother couldn't have done such work anymore. Her hands had trembled from arthritis. Linda hadn't come here for years, claimed there were too many memories. Then who? Claire stepped back, peering into the dark opening beneath the staircase. Someone had sealed this hiding place. Deliberately, and done it so no one would find it. But why? She dropped to her knees, examined the corners. Boards, old nails. And then she saw it, a small metal loop, barely visible in the shadow. Claire pulled it toward her. Weak resistance. Something shifted inside the wall, but didn't open. She tried again. The loop held. Claire released it, stared into the darkness. A second hiding place. Someone had hidden something else here, and sealed it so it would be nearly impossible to open. Claire stood, walked to the storage closet. She needed tools, a hammer, a crowbar, anything to open this cursed panel. She pushed the closet door. It opened easily. Claire stepped inside, and in that same instant, the door slammed shut behind her. A bang. Silence. Claire froze. Her hand automatically reached for the handle, turned it. Locked. She pushed the door with her shoulder. It didn't budge. Tried again. Nothing. Darkness pressed in from all sides. There were no windows here. They'd been boarded up years ago. Claire felt along the walls, searching for the light switch. Her fingers found dusty boxes, old jars of preserves, the cold metal of shelves. No draft. The air stood still, stagnant, heavy. The door had slammed shut on its own. Or someone had closed it. Claire listened. Silence. No footsteps, no breathing. But the sensation of presence remained, as if someone stood nearby, in the darkness, invisible. She found the switch, clicked it. The light didn't come on. Claire exhaled slowly, counted to 4, to 6, then pushed the door again, harder. Once more. On the third try, the lock gave way. The door opened with an unpleasant creak. Claire stepped into the hallway, turned on the light, looked around. No one. But when she looked at the floor, she saw marks. Scratches. Thin, repeating, as if from small shoes or a toy wheel. They followed a straight trajectory, from the closet threshold to the staircase and back. Claire crouched, ran her finger over one of the marks. Old. Very old, but distinct. A child had played here, many years ago. Rolled something across the floor, or ran in small shoes with hard soles. Claire stood, walked down the hallway, following the scratches. They led to the staircase, stopped at the 4th step, the one that creaked. She stepped on it, the sound high, sharp. Elena remembered that sound, because she'd heard it every day. Claire returned to the living room, sat at the table, pulled out her notebook, wrote, Elena lived here 3 years, from infancy to age 4. Grandma hid documents. Why? Linda is afraid to talk. Why? Someone sealed the second hiding place. Who? She stared at the notes, trying to construct logic. Her grandmother had been saving a child, possibly a granddaughter, or a girl from a troubled family. Linda didn't want to talk about it. Shame, old grievances, family secrets. It all fit together. Claire closed the notebook. The tension in her chest eased. She'd found an explanation. But somewhere deep, another feeling was growing. Wrong. Unsettling. This version was too simple, too convenient, too much like what she wanted to believe. The next day, Claire went to her mother's again. This time, she didn't call ahead. Linda opened the door in a bathrobe, hair clipped back, eyes red. Claire, you again. We need to finish this conversation. Linda pressed her lips together, stepped back, letting her daughter inside. The apartment smelled of valerian. On the table sat a cup of unfinished tea. Claire sat on the couch. Linda remained standing by the window. I found documents, Claire said, in Grandma's house. Elena really did live there, from infancy. Linda nodded slowly, as if confirming something she'd been silent about for years. Why did you hide her? Because, Linda ran her hand over her face. Because it was easier that way. For everyone. For whom? For the family. What family? Elena didn't have a family. She did. Linda's voice trembled. But she had to be taken away. Claire straightened. Taken away? Linda sank into a chair, clasped her hands on her knees. I didn't want it, Grandma cried. But social services said it was safer. for everyone. Safer? From what? Linda didn't answer. Claire stood, moved closer. Mom? What are you talking about? Linda raised her gaze, eyes wet but still no tears. You don't understand. They took her away because it was safer for everyone. The words fell into silence, heavy as stones. Claire stared at her mother, at the trembling hands, at the hunched shoulders, at the face frozen in an expression of fear that had been building for 30 years. You were afraid of her? Linda closed her eyes. Leave, Claire, please. Claire didn't move. You were afraid of a 4-year-old child? You don't understand. Then explain it. No! Linda jumped up. Her voice broke into a shout. No! I won't talk about this! She turned toward the wall, pressed her palms to her temples. Claire stood in the middle of the room, feeling reality shift again. Slowly, painfully. This wasn't shame. Not a family secret. This was fear. Real, deep, primal fear of a child who'd been taken away 30 years ago. Claire turned and left. The door slammed behind her. She walked down the stairs, gripping the railing, feeling her legs buckle. Linda's words echoed in her head, stretching out. Safer for everyone. Safer for everyone. Elena had seemed fragile, lost. A woman who'd lived her entire life in the shadow of others' decisions. But now even her fragility looked suspicious. What if she wasn't a victim? What if she really had needed to be removed? Claire stepped outside. Cold air seared her lungs. She inhaled deeply, trying to regain clarity. But inside, a new feeling was growing. Terrifying. Inevitable. Maybe Elena wasn't a lost relative. Maybe she was a threat, and the family had known it from the very beginning. Claire spread documents across the table in her grandmother's living room, where the old clock measured out seconds in mechanical beats, slow, heavy, as if time itself had grown tired. Death certificate on the left, passport copy on the right. Elena's card from the hiding place in the center. Each stack secured with a clear clip. Every document checked twice. Order, the only thing she could control. Her fingers moved automatically, turning pages, checking dates, sorting papers by category. This ritual was calming, not because it gave answers, but because it created the illusion of understanding. Claire took a yellow sticky note, wrote, "Attorney, urgent." Stuck it to the folder with the inheritance registry. Chaos retreated a step. She sat, exhaled, looked at the spread papers. If she finished the processing, everything else would fall into place. If she closed this story, the fear would let go. If she signed the documents, she'd be able to breathe. Claire opened her notebook, wrote, "Plan. Bring Elena to attorney. Process consent. Get signature. Close case." Underlined twice. The clock struck 9. Claire picked up her phone. Morrison's voice answered after the third ring, even professional, reassuring. "Miss Patterson, go ahead." She held the phone with both hands to keep it from shaking. "Mr. Morrison, I need to schedule a meeting about the inheritance." "Of course. When works for you?" "Tomorrow. Morning, if possible." Pause, rustling pages. 10:30. Does that work? It does. Documents with you? Yes, and the third heir will be with me. Another pause, shorter but noticeable. You found her? Yes. Excellent. I'll prepare the documents. See you tomorrow. He hung up. Claire set the phone on the table, looked at her hands. Her fingers no longer trembled. The plan had taken shape, clear, tangible. Tomorrow she'd bring Elena. Morrison would explain the procedure. Elena would sign. The case would close. Claire allowed herself to almost believe it. Almost. The rehabilitation center greeted her with the same bleach and overwashed linens. Claire walked through the lobby, climbed the stairs, stopped at room 12. Knocked. "Come in." Elena sat by the window. Gray hoodie, worn sneakers, hands folded on her knees. When Claire entered, Elena turned her head slowly, as if expecting to see someone else. "Claire?" "Yes." Claire closed the door, remained standing by the threshold. "I need your help. Tomorrow morning, meeting with the attorney." Elena blinked. Once. Twice. "A meeting?" "Yes, to process the inheritance. Without your signature, the house can't be transferred." Elena lowered her gaze. Her fingers gripped the edge of her hoodie. "I'm not sure. Please." The word came out quietly, but stubbornly. Elena raised her head, looked at Claire attentively, a long, studying gaze. "You're afraid of me?" Not a question, a statement. Claire froze. "No, you are. I can see it." Silence. Claire exhaled slowly. "I don't understand who you are, that's all." Elena nodded, as if that were answer enough. "I don't understand either." She stood, walked to the nightstand, picked up her bag. "Tomorrow morning. What time?" 10:30. I'll pick you up." "Okay." Elena returned to the window, sat down. Her hands settled back on her knees. Claire stood by the door, feeling strange relief. Elena had agreed. It was a step forward. But inside, quietly, barely noticeably, anxiety stirred. Elena had agreed too easily, as if she wanted to walk through that door just as much as Claire did. Claire left the room. The shuttle bus smelled of plastic and overheated air. Elena sat by the window, watching streets slide past. Claire held onto a handrail, observing her from the corner of her eye. Elena was silent, but her silence wasn't tense, rather thoughtful. Claire allowed herself to relax her shoulders. For the first time in long weeks, the day seemed bright, clear. They were going to the attorney. Elena would sign, the documents would be processed, the story would close. Claire imagined returning home with signed papers, closing the folder, finally exhaling without the weight in her chest. This small hope was almost a luxury. She allowed herself to feel it. The shuttle stopped. Claire stood. They got off. Elena followed her. When they stepped outside, cold air burned their lungs. Claire stopped before the office building, glass, cold, impersonal, and suddenly remembered Linda's trembling hands. Safer for everyone. The traces of child's footsteps in the closet, scratches on the floor. Fresh plaster under the staircase, the sealed hiding place. Documents arranged as if her grandmother had been preparing them for a future dispute. But a dispute with whom? Claire stood on the sidewalk, feeling her certainty waver. The puzzle in her head was incomplete, and some pieces didn't belong to this story at all. "Claire?" Elena stood beside her, looking at her questioningly. Claire exhaled. "Sorry, let's go." They entered the building. The elevator rose slowly. Claire watched the numbers changing on the panel. Second floor? Third? Questions returned. Why had her grandmother hidden the documents so carefully? Why was Linda still afraid to speak? Why had they sealed the hiding place with fresh plaster? Claire tried to find the logic. Her grandmother had been protecting a child from someone dangerous or from something terrible. But then why had she preserved the papers? Protection looks different. Protection means destroying evidence. This was an archive. Claire closed her eyes. 4th floor. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. Claire stepped out first. Elena followed, quietly, almost soundlessly. The corridor was filled with people, voices, complaints, irritation. At the reception desk stood a man, large, with a twisted face. He was cursing loudly, waving his arms. "I was here first. Why am I being made to wait?" The receptionist spoke calmly but tensely. "Please wait your turn." "What turn? I've been here half an hour." Claire tried to walk past. The man spun around sharply, grabbed her arm. The grip was rough, painful. "Where do you think you're going? Cutting in line?" Claire froze. Her body tensed, breathing stopped. A roar rose in her head, familiar, frightening, paralyzing. The man pulled her toward him, hissed something unintelligible, and suddenly his hand flew away. Elena pushed him back, confidently, firmly, precisely. The movement was quick, but not frantic, practiced. The man stumbled back a step, lost his balance, grabbed the wall. Elena stood in front of Claire, face cold, expression hard. No confusion, no fear. "Don't touch her." Voice even, almost frightening. The man looked at her, squinted, stepped back further, muttered something obscene, and turned away. Claire stood with her hand pressed to her chest. Her heart beat too fast. Elena turned to her. "Are you okay?" Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. They walked to the attorney's office. Claire walked down the corridor, feeling her legs buckle. She was grateful to Elena, genuinely. But in Elena's movements wasn't just decisiveness. It was a learned response. As if she was accustomed to defending herself in far more dangerous situations. Claire tried to calm herself. Elena had just been frightened for her. Nothing strange about that. But doubt clung, grew. Who exactly had she brought with her? Morrison's office smelled of paper, ink, and coffee. Neatly arranged documents lay on the desk. The attorney greeted them with a nod. "Ms. Patterson, please sit." Claire sat. Elena sat beside her, crossing her arms over her chest. Morrison opened the folder. "So, processing the inheritance requires consent from all parties. We have 3 heirs, Linda Patterson, Claire Patterson, and Elena Hartley." He looked at Elena. "You are Elena Hartley?" Elena froze. "Yes. Passport, please." Elena hesitated. Too long. Claire felt her stomach tighten. Elena slowly pulled a worn passport from her bag, handed it across the desk. Morrison opened the passport, frowned, looked at the documents in the folder, then at the passport, back at the documents. His eyebrows rose higher than usual. "This shows a different name." Claire straightened. "What?" The attorney turned the passport toward her. "Alana Grayson." Silence. Claire stared at the photograph. Elena's face, but the name, someone else's. Morrison closed the passport, set it on the desk. "You're not Elena Hartley." Not a question, a statement. Elena lowered her gaze. "No." Voice quiet, even. Claire felt reality slipping from under her feet again, slowly, painfully. "Then who are you?" Elena raised her head, looked at Claire directly, I found documents in the Social Services Archive about a girl who disappeared 30 years ago. Elena Hartley. The birth date matched. The age matched. You stole her identity?
I took the name. I needed a name.
Why?
Elena clenched her fingers into a fist. Because I didn't have one of my own. Claire stared at her, at the pale face, at the tense shoulders, at the hands clenched so tight the knuckles had turned white. But how did you remember the house? Elena didn't answer immediately, then slowly exhaled.
I don't know. I just remember.
Morrison leaned back in his chair. Without documentation for Elena Hartley, processing is impossible. You understand? Claire nodded mechanically. The attorney closed the folder. I need time to sort this out. I'll contact you later. Claire stood. Her legs moved on their own. Elena followed, silently. They left the office. The corridor seemed endless to Claire, footsteps echoing. The elevator descended too slowly. Elena stood beside her, head down. Claire watched the numbers on the panel. 3rd floor, 2nd. Her world had crumbled again. Like a puzzle where half the pieces were decoys, Elena wasn't an heir, wasn't the girl who'd lived in the house. But then how did she remember the details? The rabbit lamp, the faded wallpaper, the 4th step. 1st floor. The doors opened. Claire stepped out. Cold air hit her face. She stopped on the sidewalk, staring at the gray sky. Everything she'd understood had turned out to be a lie. And it was all starting over. Morrison shoved the passport away sharply, as if it burned his fingers. The chair creaked under his weight. He pressed the security call button, not with one finger, but with his whole palm, with force that left a white mark on his skin. This is fraud. Voice metallic, dry. Article 159 of the Criminal Code. Document forgery with intent to illegally obtain property. Do you understand the seriousness of this situation? He spoke rapidly, citing law, as if constructing a defensive wall from paragraphs and statutes. Claire stared at the passport. Last name, Grayson. First name, Alana. Face, Elena's. A vein at the attorney's temple pulsed visibly. Elena sat motionless, hands clenched into fists on her knees, shoulders hunched forward, as if she were trying to make herself smaller. I'm calling the police! Morrison reached for the phone. The notary office bears responsibility for verification. Wait. Claire's voice came out steadier than she expected. The attorney froze, looked at her across the desk. Ms. Patterson, do you understand the situation you're in? This woman tried to use you to obtain an inheritance with fraudulent documents. I didn't. Elena tried to speak, but her voice broke. The door opened. A security guard entered, a massive man with heavy movements. His gaze swept the room, stopped on Elena. Assessed. Rendered verdict. Guilty. Claire saw the guard step back half a pace closer to the door, standard exit blocking position. Elena noticed it too. Her fingers clenched tighter. Beyond the glass partition in the corridor, people were raising their heads. Someone whispered. The receptionist retreated to the wall, pressing a folder of documents to her chest. Distrust spread through the air like ink through water. Claire tasted bitterness in her mouth. The court of public opinion had rendered its judgment faster than any institution. Elena gripped the edge of the table. Her knuckles turned white. Breathing faltered, short, interrupted. She tried to inhale deeper, but air stuck in her throat, turned into a wheeze. Morrison kept talking, but Claire no longer heard the words. She was watching Elena. The trembling lower lip, the dilated pupils, the shoulders hunched as if waiting for a blow. Each word from the attorney fell on Elena like a stone, and she didn't defend herself, just sat, accepted it, as if she was used to it. Claire felt coldness in her chest, ashen, heavy. Her arms became lead. The internal voice, the one she'd cultivated for years like a strict overseer, hissed, "You were wrong. Again. You're always wrong about people." Thoughts scattered like beads from a broken string. She'd brought a con artist here, believed memories that could have been fabricated, trusted a woman whose name turned out to be a lie. Shame mixed with fury. At Elena, at herself, at the system. Claire had lost more than control. She'd lost the ability to trust her own logic. "Stand up." The guard took a step forward. Elena didn't move. "Please stand up," voice firmer. Claire looked at the spread documents, at the card from the hiding place, at the passport with someone else's name. The house that had been a symbol of stability had become an unattainable dream. Her grandmother's secret, a sordid story. Linda wasn't answering calls. Claire stood on the ruins of her hopes, and there wasn't a single support. The dead end had become physical, dense, pressing on her chest. Elena slowly stood. Her legs buckled. Her hand grabbed the back of the chair. "Wait." Voice quiet, but firm. Everyone froze. Elena raised her head, looked at Claire. "I remember the room." Pause. "What room?" Morrison frowned. "Her room." Elena nodded toward Claire. "In the house." Claire felt her heart beat harder. Elena continued. Words came slowly but steadily. "There was a lamp, shaped like a rabbit. It sat on the dresser. I was afraid of it. One eye always stared into the darkness." Silence. On the wall, by the bed, there were scratches. From the bed rails. 3 long lines. I counted them before sleeping. Claire stopped breathing. And the ceiling. There was a crack, like lightning. Faded. Started at the window and went to the door. She spoke quietly, but each word dropped into the silence like water into still water. The window rattled on windy days. The latch didn't hold well. Grandma said she needed to fix it, but never did. The guard froze by the door. Morrison stared at Elena with disbelief mixed with confusion. Claire remembered. The rabbit lamp her grandmother had bought at a market. "For coziness," she'd said. The scratches from the old bed that Claire herself had made when trying to push it against the wall. The crack in the ceiling she'd studied before sleep, making up stories about thunder and lightning. The rattling window her grandmother promised to fix every winter. Details no one would write in an archive. Details only someone who'd lived in that room would remember. Claire remembered the drawings signed Lena, the child's social services card, the strange birth date, the hiding place under the stairs, documents neatly folded as if someone had prepared them for the future. Linda's words, "They took her away because it was safer for everyone." The mosaic was coming together. Social services had changed the name, the surname, the birth date. But the child's memory, the one hidden deeper than documents, had survived and stood before her in the flesh. Claire reached for the folder of documents. "Ms. Patterson, don't touch." Morrison tried to grab the folder, but Claire was faster. She opened it, pulled out the copy of the inheritance registry, the card from the hiding place, looked at the attorney. "You talked about law, about rules, about fraud." Voice steady. "But you didn't ask the main thing. How does she remember the house?" "Ms. Patterson,
How does she remember details that aren't written down anywhere? The attorney was silent. Claire looked at the documents in her hands, at the dates, at the names, at the stamps. Paper. Cold. Dead. Incapable of holding truth. She tore a sheet, the sound sharp, deafening. Morrison jumped up. "What are you doing?" Claire tore another. Slowly, methodically. Sheets fell to the floor, white, light, useless. The guard moved forward. Claire raised her hand, the gesture confident, stopping. "Don't come closer." He stopped. The attorney came around the desk, grabbed the edge. "You're destroying official documents. This is a crime." "This is a mistake." Claire tore the last sheet. "Your mistake. The systems. Everyone who believes papers more than people." She turned to Elena. They changed a child's name. Data erased the past, but not the memory. Her voice became firmer. Home isn't paper. Home is memory. Silence. Morrison stared at her with disbelief. "You can't prove this." "I can." Claire lifted the card from the hiding place. "My grandmother preserved documents, old ones, real ones. She knew the truth would be needed someday." She placed the card on the desk. "The birth date matches. Place of placement, this house. Duration, 3 years. It's all here." The attorney took the card, studied it, frowned. "This is an outdated format. 30 years ago. Yes. When they took Elena from the family. But the surname changed by social services. For some reason." Claire looked at Elena. "Maybe for safety? Maybe by mistake? It doesn't matter. What matters is that she remembers." Elena stood by the wall, clenching her hands into fists. Tears stood on the brink, but didn't fall. Claire turned to the attorney. "I'm going to contest the inheritance, through court, with these documents, and if the system refuses to see the truth again, I'll find a way to make it." Morrison was silent. The guard shifted from foot to foot. Claire picked up her bag, walked to Elena. "Let's go." Elena didn't move, looked at her with distrust mixed with hope. "Where?" "Home." The word fell into silence. Claire extended her hand. Elena looked at her for a long time, then slowly took her palm. Fingers cold, trembling. They left the office. The corridor buzzed. Voices, footsteps, rustling papers. But behind them the sounds faded, as if the world were retreating. Claire led Elena toward the exit, holding her hand, not letting go. People watched. Some judgmentally, some with curiosity. Claire paid no attention. For the first time in her life, she was acting not from fear, not from a need to conform to rules, from a sense of justice. They stepped outside. Cold wind burned her face. Claire inhaled deeply. The air seemed cleaner. Elena stopped on the sidewalk, looked at Claire. "Why did you—" Her voice broke. "Why did you believe me?" Claire looked at her, at the gray eyes where fear and hope mingled. "Because documents can be wrong, but memory can't." Helena lowered her gaze. Claire released her hand, tucked hair behind her ear, a familiar, calming gesture. "Grandma tried to preserve you, hide documents so you'd have a chance." Voice quiet but certain. Linda tried to preserve herself, hiding trauma that wouldn't let her live. Claire took a step closer. "And you ended up between their decisions, invisible in your own story."
Elena raised her head. Tears finally rolled down her cheeks. Claire extended her hand again.
Let's go home. It's been waiting for both of us.
Elena looked at the outstretched palm, slowly took it, firmly, and they walked together down the noisy street, past indifferent passers-by, into the wind. Claire didn't know what would come next, how to prove the truth, how to convince the court, how to reconcile with Linda. But for the first time in many years, she wasn't searching for answers in advance. She'd chosen not order, but connection. Not the past, but truth. Not fear, but humanity. And for today, that was enough.